Natalia looks a little relieved. She leans slightly toward me. In a faint voice, she murmurs, "Thank you." That soft, sweet voice pierced right through my heart. My name is Jacob, a 31-year-old working at a small inspection company. Whenever there's a big routine inspection, I have to go on long business trips to various places. I just got back yesterday from a month-long business trip. For a while, I'll be able to stay in my hometown. I opened the door of a small, slightly shabby prefab building. "Hi, everyone. I'm back." When I greeted them and walked into the office, two female staff members turned their attention to me. "Hi, how are you?" "Jacob, you're back," one of them said. The one who spoke was a young woman who joined the company recently, 23 years old. Her name is Emily. She's a cheerful and cute woman. I handed Emily a souvenir since she was sitting near the entrance. "Here, a souvenir. You two can share it." Emily smiled happily when I said that. "Yay, thank you so much." As I was feeling a bit embarrassed by her cheerful smile, a blunt voice came from the back, saying, "It was a business trip, not a vacation, so you didn't have to get us anything." That was Natalia. She's been with the company for just a year, but since graduating from college, she's been doing accounting and general affairs. She's quite the veteran when it comes to office work. Still, she's younger than me, 29 years old. Naturally, that makes her my junior. But her presence clearly surpasses mine. Our company is a small one, with 25 male inspectors and 2 female office staff members. Natalia was hired to replace a 65-year-old office worker who retired a year ago, and since we were still short-handed, Emily was brought in as well. Natalia took charge of the somewhat lax office operations and started managing everything, including odd jobs, which is why they needed more help. Currently, the 2 office staff members handle a wide range of tasks, from accounting, general affairs, and HR to data entry, serving tea, shopping, cleaning, and even weeding the parking lot. Even though Natalia said we didn't need souvenirs, I decided to speak to her while she was focused on her computer. "I really appreciate all your hard work. Please enjoy it during your break." And also, with a pounding heart, I reached into my bag. I dropped a large envelope filled with receipts onto Natalia's desk. "Expense report from the business trip. Thanks in advance." Honestly, I always bring souvenirs because I want her to handle this task pleasantly. Since this trip was a month long, I ended up with a huge pile of receipts. In our company, whether it's a business trip or shopping, we can submit expenses after the fact. For large purchases, we sometimes check beforehand, but as long as we inform President, Mr. Brown, about who we're meeting when it comes to entertainment expenses, there's no need for formal approval. Natalia carefully checked each receipt and statement, one by one. She pushed a piece of paper in front of me. "Here, the count of days off is incorrect. You didn't include the public holiday." Even though I thought I double-checked, I made a careless mistake. "I'm sorry." I took the paper back humbly and made the correction. Glancing at her hands, I saw her efficiently going through the rest of the receipts. As I nervously watched, her hand finally stopped at one receipt. "Jacob, this is..." The receipt she was holding was from nightclub. "Well, the branch manager over there likes that kind of place, and..." I kind of had to go along with him. In our company, there's no rule against using nightclubs for client entertainment. However, I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels uneasy showing a nightclub receipt to a woman. As I mumbled my excuse, Natalia calmly said, "I am not blaming you. It's just that the amount is a bit large. How many people went?" I tried to recall the members from that day. The previous office staff never asked about things like this. Since Natalia became the office manager, she has been asking for such details, but I still haven't gotten used to it, so I sometimes forget to report them. It was 7 people, I think." When I said that, Natalia wrote it down on the back of the receipt. "Then, please tell me who the members were," she asked further. Well, some of the guys have wives who don't allow them to go to nightclubs." I was about to say I'd really appreciate it if you could let that slide, but Natalia glared at me. It's important to have this information. It's just in case there's a tax audit. I'm not going to report it to anyone's wife, so please just tell me. It's merely for confirmation." After being firmly told, I reluctantly listed all the members. I still didn't quite understand why people's names were needed for a tax audit. After that, Natalia kept asking detailed questions about the use of supplies and who I gave souvenirs to. Just then, the aroma of coffee filled the room. "Let's try Jacob's souvenir right away. You'll have some too, right, Jacob?" Even though it was still morning, Emily came over with a smile and a cup of coffee. I gratefully accepted it and took a bite of the souvenir I had bought. Natalia, still focused on her computer, said, "I'll have some once I finish checking everything." I discreetly glanced at her profile. A high-bridged nose, thin, firm lips, fair skin, and large, slightly upturned eyes with distinct double eyelids. The truth is, she's an exceptionally beautiful woman. But maybe because of her stern demeanor and competence, all the male employees unanimously find Emily cuter. I shifted my gaze to Emily, who was happily munching on the souvenir. Her expressions changed constantly. She had short, wavy, light brown hair. Her eyes were a bit small, but her makeup made her long eyelashes stand out, and her lips were glossy. If Natalia were a dignified white horse, Emily would be an adorable fawn. While I was lost in thought, Natalia finished her checks. "Everything else is fine," she said. Since I had finished my snack, I stood up to return to my seat. Then Natalia looked at me and, with a slight smile, said, "Good job on your business trip." To be honest, I find myself a bit captivated by Natalia at moments like this. It's just a single phrase, but it feels genuinely thoughtful and leaves a good impression. That weekend, I was invited to visit a relative's house on my day off. Since my relatives would be traveling during the New Year's holidays, they decided to hold a family gathering early. My family has a strong bond, and during holidays like Oban or New Year's, we usually gather in large numbers. It's mostly because my dad's brothers just like to have a good time. Now that my married cousins rarely show up due to family commitments, I found myself surrounded by aunts and uncles, pretending to watch TV to pass the time. Feeling a bit restless in that atmosphere, I decided to take a walk. It was an area I used to play in a lot as a kid, and it's only about a 15-minute drive from my house. The slightly strong winter wind felt refreshing. Perhaps because I had just been in a room heated to an almost uncomfortable degree, I naturally headed towards the small park where I used to play with my cousins. As I approached the park, I heard a woman's cheerful voice. "Aha! Oh, come on, Max. You're way too excited. I'm getting tired. What? One more time." The voice was high-pitched and adorable. She was probably playing with a dog. Curious, I peeked into the park and was taken aback. The person making those playful sounds was none other than Natalia. Normally, she always spoke in a formal, reserved tone, and I'd never heard her raise her voice like that before. Could Natalia really make such a high-pitched voice? Instinctively, I turned on my heels and hid behind the wall where the park wasn't visible. Peeking cautiously from behind the wall, I saw Natalia chasing a ball around. Her black hair, usually tied low in a simple bun at the office, was now gathered into a slightly higher ponytail. Her usual calm and composed expression had transformed into a bright, beaming smile, and her cheeks were flushed probably from all the exercise. Seeing this unexpected side of Natalia made my heart race. I thought she looked incredibly beautiful, but I was sure she wouldn't want someone from the same company like me to see her like that. I quietly returned the way I came, walking toward the river before heading back to my relative's house. The whole time I was walking, I couldn't get Natalia's smiling face out of my head. Since then, I couldn't help but feel curious about Natalia, but nothing changed between us, and my days continued with me occasionally glancing at her during office work, remembering that smile from the park. As the year-end approached, our company planned to hold a year-end party on the last working day of the year. Unlike our usual drinking spots, it would be at a slightly upscale restaurant, so I was looking forward to it, as always. I heard that the organizer this year had booked a pufferfish restaurant. However, despite it being the end of the year, I made a big mistake and had to redo some inspection data entry, which meant I'd be late to the party. I begged my coworkers to save some pufferfish sashimi for me, but I had a bad feeling it wouldn't be left. About an hour late, I finally arrived at the venue. Even before entering the banquet hall, I could hear the lively noise. My coworkers are all heavy drinkers and love to party. It seemed like they were already quite drunk. When I entered the hall, everyone greeted me enthusiastically. Then they made fun of me for my last blunder of the year. People had already moved to their favorite spots. Looking around to find my seat, I felt something odd. Natalia was sitting alone, quietly drinking. The other guys were chatting among themselves or crowding around Emily. Among the group was President Mr. Brown, who tends to get overly clingy when drunk. Judging by Emily's expression, he was probably already bothering her somehow. I hesitantly approached Natalia's side. "Mind if I sit here?" When I asked Natalia, she looked a bit surprised. Then she averted her gaze. "You don't have to bother with me." Saying that, she took a small sake cup in both hands and gulped it down. The way she held the cup delicately with her fingertips looked elegant. I picked up a nearby sake bottle and offered it to Natalia. She hesitated for a moment, then held out her empty cup. As I poured the sake, she quietly said, "Thank you." A brief silence followed. In the midst of the noisy banquet hall, our little space felt strangely isolated. "You really don't have to stay here. I'm just drinking by myself," Natalia said. But I relaxed my posture and stayed by her side. "Well, everyone's already pretty drunk, and I don't think I have enough alcohol in me to jump into that crowd. Whose seat is this? Mind if I stay?" Then, without a word, Natalia stood up and walked away. Wait, does she really dislike drinking with me that much? Feeling a bit lost, I watched her as she moved to another table where she picked up some chopsticks and appetizers, bringing them back to me. "These are yours, Jacob." I realized she had gone to get my place settings from my original seat. Relieved that she hadn't left out of discomfort, I couldn't help but admire her thoughtful gesture. Then, Natalia called over a server for the person who arrived late. After Natalia told the server that, they smiled and walked away. And then, right in front of me, a plate of pufferfish sashimi appeared. "Natalia, this?" Feeling touched, I asked Natalia, and she replied, "I heard you would be arriving late, Jacob." I asked if they could bring out one portion separately, and they said it was fine, so I requested it. Her thoughtfulness warmed my heart. I almost felt like crying. People in our company tend to be pretty careless, so I've never experienced this kind of consideration before. If you're late to a party, the food is usually gone. At best, I'd end up begging Mr. Brown to order a few snacks separately. "Natalia, thank you. I didn't think there'd be any pufferfish left, so I'm really happy." I grabbed a few slices with my chopsticks, dipped them in ponzu sauce, and popped them into my mouth. Delicious! When I ordered some sake, Natalia poured it for me. Gratefully, I took a sip and tried to make some small talk. Our year-end parties can be pretty loud, right? This must be your first one since you joined in February, right? She had joined at an odd time, just before the 65-year-old veteran retired. "Yes, I'm not good with these kinds of gatherings." She said it outright, and I couldn't help but smile wryly. "You could have skipped it, you know. There are only 2 women here, and drinking with all these loud guys must be a hassle." I laughed, but Natalia shook her head. "No, I believe I should attend the year-end party. After all, Mr. Brown is kindly showing his appreciation for the year's hard work." Her sincere answer made my heart skip a beat for some reason. "That's pretty admirable." When I said that, Natalia looked at me quizzically. "It's not admirable at all. My seriousness probably just annoys everyone." Saying that, she drained her sake cup. Her eyes looked a bit glazed. It seemed she had been drinking quite a lot. My father was often away on business trips too. Suddenly, Natalia muttered something like that. I wondered what she was talking about and looked at her. When the company had a tax audit, they really came down hard on him. My father held a relatively high position, so he used company expenses freely. He often went to nightclubs during business trips. Hearing the word nightclub made my heart skip a beat. The amounts were always large, and the purposes were unclear. Things like theme park admission fees. Of course, they were suspicious. In the end, it turned out that the theme park visits were for entertaining senior officials from the other company, so it was all cleared. But until that was confirmed, my father was under intense scrutiny. It turned out that the theme park was actually a favorite of a senior executive from the client company, so they used it for hospitality, and it was deemed acceptable. That's why it's important to know who, where, and why for every expense. So that's where her story was leading. I gave her a small round of applause. That makes sense. I've learned something. I always wondered why you were so meticulous, but now I understand. I'll explain it to everyone next time. I doubt anyone will remember if I say it now. I glanced around at my coworkers, who were already pretty drunk and making noise, and couldn't help but laugh. Natalia lowered her gaze. It's fine. I can still do my job even if people don't like me. In fact, it's easier that way. Her resigned tone made me feel a bit sad. Asking so directly takes a lot of courage because I worry about being disliked. But if people already don't like me, I don't have to worry about that. Maybe the alcohol was loosening her up, but Natalia was being surprisingly candid. It was kind of amusing. Seeing her like that made me feel a bit mischievous. Natalia, you have a dog, right? When I asked, Natalia's eyes widened in surprise. If I remember correctly, its name is Max. When I said it outright, Natalia let out a small gasp. Huh. I couldn't help but laugh as I revealed the truth. Actually, it was about 2 weeks ago, I think. I saw you playing with Max in the park. You looked so happy and cute. This time, Natalia couldn't help but shout, "What?" in a loud voice. The lively atmosphere in the banquet hall suddenly fell silent for a moment. Everyone turned their attention to Natalia, trying to identify the source of the loud voice. Nobody had ever heard Natalia raise her voice like that. Realizing she was the center of attention, Natalia's face turned bright red, like a boiled lobster. Since the opportunity was right, I decided to ask everyone, "Hey, does anyone here dislike Natalia?" Fueled by the alcohol, I managed to ask the question quite casually. Natalia panicked and tried to stop me. But it started with one voice saying, "Who would dislike her?" And then others chimed in one after another. One after another, people expressed their gratitude to Natalia, saying things like, "She's a bit intimidating, but we always appreciate her. The accounting used to be sloppy, but now it's so much clearer. We'd like to handle the weeding ourselves, but Summer is just too busy and she always takes care of the little things we overlook, and that really helps." Suddenly, large tears started rolling down Natalia's cheeks. Everyone in the room was caught off guard. Of course, I, who started all of this, was the most flustered. "Wait, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you cry. I just wanted you to know that nobody dislikes you." To be honest, I already knew that everyone had a positive impression of Natalia. Since Emily is young and cute, she's easy to talk to, so everyone approaches her, but it's not like they dislike Natalia. Natalia just tends to focus seriously on her work, so people hesitate to talk to her. At parties like this, they naturally gravitate toward the more approachable people. After all, it's a male-dominated workplace. Most of the guys are awkward and not great at dealing with women. If they can joke around like they do with Emily, they're fine, but Natalia feels a bit harder to approach. As I was explaining this, Emily pouted. "But still, you shouldn't leave her all alone at a party." I wanted to talk to Natalia too, but Mr. Brown kept chatting with me, and I couldn't get away. Since Emily had only joined recently and hadn't seen much of Mr. Brown due to his frequent business trips, she couldn't exactly brush him off. But the fact that Emily could speak so casually now meant that Mr. Brown had probably gotten pretty drunk and chatty, and they seemed to have hit it off. Emily no longer showed any signs of restraint. Glancing over at Mr. Brown, I saw him scratching his head with a sheepish look. It made me think that we really do have a nice, laid-back company. Natalia wiped away her tears and muttered softly, "At every company I've worked at, people always said I was too serious and boring. So it makes me happy to know that you think positively about my work." She said that quietly, looking down. To lighten the mood, I stood up. "Okay, to make sure Natalia doesn't have to say anything, write the purpose on your expense receipts. For entertainment or meeting expenses, include the members' names. Don't make calculation errors. All of this is to protect you from tax audits. That's all." Saying that, I plopped back down into my seat. The banquet hall erupted in laughter. Natalia looked a little relieved. Then she leaned slightly toward me. In a faint voice, she murmured, "Thank you." This soft, sweet voice pierced right through my heart. 2 months later, I found myself at the park where I had seen Natalia before. Since confirming my feelings for her at the year-end party, I had been subtly trying to get closer to her. I know I'm pretty shy. So I've just been doing small things, like bringing canned coffee to the office during my lunch break when I stopped by from the site. But Emily seemed to have caught on to my efforts toward Natalia, saying, "Natalia seems a bit oblivious, so I think you should be more proactive." Taking her advice to heart, I started coming to this park on weekends. It's a small park near my relative's house. The park where I was now was the same one where I had seen Natalia playing with Max before. I was hoping I might bump into her. I suddenly remembered Emily's face saying, "That's not what I meant." Maybe it was just my imagination. I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't quite understanding what Emily meant by being more proactive. Natalia seems like the type to have a fixed schedule for walking though. Maybe I'll try again next week. I sat down on a park bench and muttered to myself. Just then, I heard footsteps and Natalia walked into the park. "See, you do get it. I always take walks at the same time. But every week, you are here in the park, so I can't play with Max." Natalia pouted as she said that. "Wait, you knew I'd been coming to the park?" Surprised, I asked, and she nodded silently, still pouting. "Every time I thought about coming to the park, I saw you there and hurriedly turned back. It's tough convincing Max to go home." Hearing that, I felt a bit shocked. Is running into me really that bad? When I asked, Natalia's cheeks turned slightly red. "It's not just a coincidence, right? You just want to see me being silly and make fun of me again, don't you?" I'm never showing that embarrassing side of me at work again. It seemed like she was completely misunderstanding the situation. Emily's words suddenly popped into my head. I felt like I could hear her saying, "Go for a direct approach. I didn't come here to make fun of you. I just genuinely wanted to see her smile." Hearing that, Natalia let out a strange squeak. Fweh. Startled by my words, or maybe just reaching her limit, Max suddenly bolted forward. Natalia's grip loosened, and the leash slipped from her hand. Oh no, Max stopped. Now free, Max sprinted around the park at full speed. Though the road outside the park didn't have much traffic, some cars still passed by. Both Natalia and I panicked, but Max ran straight to me, wagging his tail furiously. I patted Max's head roughly. "Good boy. You like me, huh? You're a smart one." After being petted for a while, Max flopped onto his back, showing his belly. When I rubbed his stomach, he looked completely content. No way, he never lets anyone but me do that. Natalia lives with her parents, but apparently, Max never does this even with them. "He knows that I like you, Natalia." I said it directly, and Natalia's face turned even redder. "You know, ever since you said, 'Good job' after I submitted my travel expense report, I've been drawn to you. I kept wondering why, but I realized it's because your words had genuine warmth. And when you made sure the restaurant saved me some food when I was late to the year-end party, it really hit me you're such a thoughtful person." As I spoke, my heart pounded so hard I could barely keep calm. If I wasn't petting Max's belly, I might have completely lost my composure. When I come home, I wanted to hear a heartfelt, "Welcome back" like that. "So, would you go out with me?" I somehow managed to look into Natalia's eyes when I said the last part. She buried her face in her scarf, and only her long, almond-shaped eyes peeked out. "But I'm just a boring, serious woman. I think you're sincere and kind. Plus, you're full of energy when you're playing with Max." Hearing that, Natalia covered her face with both hands. "Stop, don't tease me." She looked so adorable that I wanted to hug her, but I held back because Max was still there. Still covering her face, Natalia asked, "Were you planning to come here every week until you met me?" Her voice sounded muffled through her scarf and hands. "Yeah, pretty much." When I awkwardly said that, blushing, Natalia lowered her hands from her face and looked at me. "That's really creepy," she said. Hearing that, I was completely shocked. As I fumbled for words to apologize, Natalia let out a small laugh. "That's why. I think you shouldn't do that with anyone else." She smiled at me with a bright, cheerful expression. "With anyone else?" I muttered, and Natalia nodded. "It's okay if it's with you." When I repeated her words quietly, Natalia pouted. "Stop confirming it like that. It's embarrassing." I immediately apologized. I stopped petting Max and spread my arms wide. Max gave a small, dissatisfied bark, but I had to ignore him for a moment. "Can I give you a hug?" Gathering my courage, I asked, and Natalia turned away and clearly said, "No." Feeling shocked once again, I must have looked pretty down, because Natalia quickly panicked. "I mean, this park is just a 3-minute walk from my house. What if a neighbor sees us?" She had a point. Now that I thought about it, my relative's house was also just around the corner. Still, when I kept looking dejected, Natalia suddenly shouted, "Geez," and quickly moved closer, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. It happened so fast that I barely registered the feeling. Natalia's face turned bright red as she looked down. "Thank you," I mumbled, still in a daze, and Natalia burst out laughing. Then, she leaned slightly against me. "You know, when you sat next to me at the year-end party, I was a little happy." Even though she said something so cute, I couldn't hug her. Feeling a bit restless, I suddenly stood up and started running. Max barked happily and chased after me. Natalia was laughing. I wondered if having a child would feel like this. Dreaming of a slightly distant future, I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness.